Being in a toxic relationship can drain the life out of you. Nobody wants to be stuck in a cycle of negativity, mistrust, and emotional turbulence. That's why the earlier you're able to spot red flags in a relationship, the sooner you can take action to protect your mental and emotional health. So in this video, I'm going to give you 4 signs that can indicate that you may be in an unhealthy or toxic relationship. Just a little disclaimer that I'm not going to be talking too much about abusive relationships, but I want you to use these signs more as a kind of guide to help you identify harmful patterns in your relationship and to help highlight areas that you may need to work on and resolve. So, if you're tuning in for the first time today, welcome. My name is Kirsty and I am the founder of Growth Seekers Club. I post weekly content on personal growth and development topics, so if this interests you, be sure to hit the subscribe button and like this video. Now, let's get into today's topic. So, the first sign that your relationship may be toxic is if it feels like you're always walking on eggshells. So when we imagine someone walking on eggshells, we imagine a very fragile kind of relationship dynamic. So this could look like one person treading very cautiously around the other, being very careful of the things that they do and say because they don't want to trigger a negative response from the other person. And so let's look at a specific example. Okay, let's imagine we have a couple called Jack and Emily. And Emily has learned from past experiences that Jack can become really upset if she talks about a specific topic or makes certain remarks. So because of this, she's very cautious in the way she approaches him. Let's look at how a typical conversation between the two of them may go. So let's say that Jack is working on a project. Emily comes over and says, "Hey, that looks really interesting. What are you working on?" And Jack responds by saying something like, "You're always judging my work. Can't you see I'm busy?" And so Emily might then respond with, "I'm sorry, I didn't mean to intrude," and then just quietly walks away. And so she is very aware of doing or saying anything that might cause any misunderstandings or hurt Jack's feelings further. And the whole problem with this kind of dynamic is that it limits healthy and effective conversation and communication, and Jack and Emily will start to drift further and further apart from one another, and this kind of dynamic will continue to chip away trust in the relationship and any kind of connection, because if they're not able to communicate, then they're not able to connect, right? So over time, that void between them can grow further apart until the relationship is actually unsalvageable. Okay, let's move on and talk about the second sign that your relationship may be toxic. And the second sign that you may be in a toxic relationship is when your partner belittles or criticizes you often. You know, I'll never forget this time where I went to a friend's barbecue and I witnessed this dynamic unfolding in front of my eyes. This particular woman was belittling her partner in front of all of our friends, commenting on his weight and his eating habits. And, you know, he tried to brush it off and make it into this big joke, but it was very visible the effect this was having on him. He was visibly uncomfortable, and throughout the rest of the day, he became very withdrawn. And this is what criticism does to us, right? It makes us feel small and it makes us feel ashamed, like we need to hide. And it can have a negative impact on our self-worth, especially when it happens repeatedly. And the thing about it is that it can start out so subtly as a seemingly innocent comment or a joke that just gets worse and more hurtful over time. So today, someone could make a comment like, "Are you really going to wear that?" Whereas tomorrow, that could be, "You always wear things that are so unflattering." So it's good to be aware of those subtle jabs early on so that you can address them before they escalate and get worse. All right, let's move on to the third sign that your relationship may be toxic. And the third sign that you may be in a toxic relationship is if your partner consistently dismisses your thoughts and feelings. So if you're feeling invalidated and unheard in your relationship, then there's a good chance that your partner has been dismissing your thoughts and feelings. And this can show up in many different ways. So it can look like comments from your partner like, "You're overreacting," or "You're too sensitive," and other kinds of comments where your feelings are ignored or kind of brushed to the side. Another way it can show up is if your partner tries to change the topic or gets defensive when you bring up issues. So let's imagine a couple, Sam and Matt. And Sam and Matt had plans to go for dinner. But Matt got stuck at work and didn't inform Sam that he wouldn't be able to make it. So the next day, Sam confronts Matt and tells him, "I feel really hurt that you didn't let me know that you couldn't make it to dinner. I feel like my time wasn't valued." Then Matt might respond and say something like, "You're overreacting. I told you something came up at work and I had to handle it." And so the more this kind of dynamic happens, the more it kind of builds walls between two people. Because again, it limits that effective communication. And that gap can keep growing, that gap in communication, and you can start to lose the connection and respect and trust that you've built with one another. Okay. Now the fourth and final sign I want to talk about today is that in toxic relationships, the relationship can be imbalanced. And what I really mean by this is that there's usually an imbalance in power within the relationship where one person tends to give a lot more or take a lot more to the detriment of the other person. And there's many different ways this can show up. So one way could be where one person has most of the decision-making power, which then leaves the other person feeling powerless and voiceless. Another way could be someone controlling all of the finances, which can leave the other partner feeling restricted and dependent. And another example could be where one person offers considerably more emotional or practical support, and this can create resentment to grow over time because the one person is consistently putting their partner's needs above their own. Now, in healthy relationships, the balance between give and take may not be perfect, and there may be moments where one person gives more and the other person gives more, and one takes more and the other takes more. But this minor imbalance is very different to the significant imbalances that we see in a toxic relationship. So this covers the 4 signs that you may be in a toxic relationship that I wanted to share with you today. If you found this video helpful, please like it and subscribe to my channel. Next week, I'll be talking about signs that you're in a healthy relationship. If you're interested in learning about your attachment style, feel free to take my quiz, which is linked in the description below. You can also get your hands on my free communication guide for relationships, which is also linked in the description. And if you're interested in relationship coaching or counseling, you can book a free discovery call with me by also finding the link in the description. Thanks for tuning in, and I will see you next week.